Negotiations begin on second phase of Gaza truce. At least 10 dead in Sweden's worst mass shooting. Good afternoon and salam Malaysia Madani. This is World Today and my name is Daryl Baptist. Uzbekistan President Shavkat Mirziyoyev was accorded an official welcome at Perdana Putra today as he arrived for his two-day official visit to Malaysia. His arrival at 10 a.m. this morning was received by Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. The national anthems of both countries were played and Mirziyoyev then inspected a guard of honor mounted by 3 officers and 102 members of the 1st Battalion of the Royal Ranger Regiment. He later held a one-on-one meeting with Datuk Seri Anwar. Both leaders are expected to review the progress of Malaysia-Uzbekistan bilateral relations following Datuk Seri Anwar's official visit to Uzbekistan last year, particularly in trade and investment, the halal industry, education, connectivity and tourism. The Palestinian group Hamas has confirmed that negotiations for the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire and prisoner exchange agreement have started. Group spokesman Abdel Latif Al-Kanua said they are focusing on shelter, relief and rebuilding for the people of Gaza. He accused Israel of delaying the implementation of humanitarian protocols in the ceasefire agreement and stalling its execution. He added shelter and humanitarian aid are urgent priorities that cannot be subject to Israeli delays. Kanua stressed that rebuilding hospitals, repairing roads and restoring water wells are essential to reviving life in Gaza after the extensive destruction caused by the Israeli war. Israel said that it will send a negotiating team to Qatar this weekend for talks on the second phase of the Gaza deal. The 42-day Phase 1 revolves around the release of 33 Israeli hostages in exchange for around 1,900 prisoners, most of them Palestinian, being held in Israeli jails. The second phase is expected to cover the release of the remaining hostages and include discussions on a more permanent end to the war. On the other hand, Israeli military offensives in 2 West Bank refugee camps have displaced nearly 5,500 Palestinian families since December last year. Jonathan Fowler, spokesman for the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, said an estimated 2,450 to 3,000 families have been displaced from the Tulkarim refugee camp. Head of the camp's popular committee, Faisal Salama, estimated that 80% of its 15,000 residents have been displaced. Both Salama and Fowler said that obtaining precise figures is challenging because of the security situation within the camp and its fluctuating population. Salama reported that the violence has severely restricted the movement of goods into the camp. He said there is a shortage of water, no electricity, no communication, and a lack of essential supplies such as milk for children, diapers, and medicine. Displacement has similarly been severe in Jenin, also in the northern West Bank, where the military launched its intensive assault last month. Fowler reported that 3,000 families, around 15,000 people, have fled Jenin refugee camp since December. Displacement has surged in recent days after the Israeli military assault inflicted further destruction on the camp. Commenting on the same topic, President Donald Trump made a proposal for the United States to take over the Gaza Strip. He also doubled down on his call for Palestinians to move out of the war-battered territory to West Asian countries such as Egypt and Jordan, despite the Palestinians and both nations flatly rejecting his suggestion. Trump said the United States would get rid of unexploded bombs, level the site, and remove destroyed buildings. He said the US would create an economic development that will supply unlimited number of jobs and housing for the people of the area. However, Trump appeared to suggest that it was not the Palestinians who would return there. He said Gaza's 2 million residents would instead go to other countries of interest with humanitarian hearts. Egypt and Jordan have flatly rejected Trump's suggestion of moving Palestinians from Gaza. Gazans have also denounced Trump's idea. The Palestinian envoy to the United Nations, meanwhile, said world leaders should respect the wishes of Palestinians. On a separate note, the US president has signed a document to stop US engagement with the United Nations Human Rights Council and halt to funding for the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA. During Trump's first term in office, from 2017 to 2021, he also cut off funding for UNRWA, questioning its value, saying that Palestinians needed to agree to renew peace talks with Israel, and calling for unspecified reforms.
Well, we're taking away a little bit, but we're not looking to take away money. This is so important that we're really, as you know, the United Nations is largely funded by us. But, and it shouldn't be, it should be funded by everybody, but we're disproportionate as we always seem to be. But it's something that if it ever lived up to the potential, in 10 minutes it would make up the difference. That's the kind of power it could have. Right now it doesn't have that power.
The first Trump administration also quit the 47-member Human Rights Council halfway through a 3-year term over what it called chronic bias against Israel and a lack of reform. The US is not currently a member of the Geneva-based body. Under Democratic former President Joe Biden, the US was re-elected and served a 2022 to 2024 term. President Volodymyr Zelensky said that his team spoke with US President Donald Trump's national security advisor and his top envoy on the war in Ukraine this week, and that they are working to arrange a visit by a US delegation. Kyiv has been trying to establish close relations with the administration of Donald Trump, who has said he wanted to bring a quick end to the nearly 3-year-old all-out war with Russia. Zelensky said his chief of staff, Andriy Yermak, had spoken with Trump's national security advisor, Michael Waltz, and that his team had spoken to Keith Kellogg, Trump's special envoy for Ukraine and Russia, the day before. Trump has given away few clues as to how he will seek to settle the war in Ukraine. He said on Monday that he wanted Kyiv to supply the United States with rare earth and other resources in exchange for financially supporting Ukraine's war efforts. The call appeared a reference to a part of a victory plan presented by Zelensky to his allies. Zelensky said Ukraine was open to investment from allies who were helping it in the war. 10 people were killed in a shooting at an adult education center, the deadliest attack to take place in Sweden on what the Prime Minister said was a painful day for the country. The gunman is believed to be among those killed, and a search is continuing at the school for other possible victims. Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson branded the incident as the worst mass shooting in the country's history. The perpetrator's motive was not immediately known. Local police chief Roberto Ede Forrest said police believed the gunman had acted alone and that they did not suspect terrorism as a motive, though he cautioned that much remained unknown. Police said they had opened an investigation into murder, arson, and an aggravated weapons offense. The shooting took place in Örebro, some 200 kilometers west of Stockholm, at the Rivsberska School for Adults who did not complete their formal education or failed to get the grades to continue to higher education. It is located on a campus that also houses schools for children. Qatar's Prime Minister said that his country would support Lebanese institutions and work on mutual projects after the formation of a Lebanese government. Lebanon needs foreign funds to help meet a huge reconstruction bill from last year's war between Israel and Hezbollah, in which Israeli airstrikes flattened swathes of the country. Qatar has been providing the Lebanese army with grants for fuel and salaries. At a press conference in Beirut following a meeting with Lebanese President Joseph Aoun, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdul Rahman Al Thani said Qatar would continue supporting the Lebanese army. Apart from meeting Aoun, who was elected president in early January, Al Thani met caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati, Prime Minister-elect Nawaf Salam and Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri. Salam, a judge who had been serving as the head of the International Court of Justice, was nominated on 13th January to form Lebanon's new cabinet. The US has pressured Lebanese officials, including Salam, not to allow Hezbollah to nominate Lebanon's next finance minister. Hezbollah began trading fire with Israel after 7th October 2023. Hezbollah and Israel reached a ceasefire in November. Meanwhile, Syrian President Ahmed al-Sharaa invited Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan to visit Syria soon in a joint press conference in Ankara, as relations between the two countries thaw under the new Syrian administration. Sharaa thanked Erdogan and the Turkish government and said he hoped Damascus and Ankara can cooperate to help stabilize Syria and the wider region. Sharaa alluded to outstanding threats in the country's northeast, where Kurdish groups control much of the territory. Ankara has said the US-allied Kurdish Syrian Democratic Forces, or SDF, must be disbanded and all senior Kurdistan Workers' Party members ousted from Syria, or it will strike, prompting negotiations over the future of the SDF. The Kurdistan Workers' Party has fought a separatist insurgency against the Turkish state for 40 years, and more than 40,000 people have been killed in the conflict. After the ousting of President Bashar al-Assad in Damascus last month, Ankara has threatened to crush the Syrian Kurdish YPG, which is a part of the SDF that it says is an extension of the Kurdistan Workers' Party. Uganda has deployed more than 1,000 extra soldiers into East Congo last week, near an area where the Kinshasa government is fighting M23 rebels, heightening fears of a regional escalation. This is according to 4 diplomatic and United Nations sources. The Rwandan-backed M23 recently captured regional capital Goma in an anarchic and mineral-rich part of Democratic Republic of Congo, where wars in 1996, 1997 and 1998 to 2003 drew in outside nations and killed millions, mostly from hunger and disease. The extra Ugandan deployment north of Goma would raise its numbers there, officially to back Congo President Felix Tshisekedi's army against another rebel force, to about 4,000 to 5,000. Rwanda also has troops operating in East Congo. Ugandan army spokesperson Felix Kulagige denied a major new deployment, saying its forces had changed their posture to offensive defense without giving further details. Congo's Communications Minister Patrick Muyaya did not respond when asked if more troops had arrived, but stressed the priority of Ugandan soldiers in the area is to fight the Allied Defense Forces, though combat against M23 and Rwandan soldiers is also possible. Still ahead, Mexico moves troops to US border after Trump delays tariffs. But before that story, former NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg has become Norway's new finance minister as part of a cabinet reshuffle, taking up the post as the Nordic country eyes the impact of a potential transatlantic trade war. Appointing the widely popular and well-respected Stoltenberg could give the struggling Labour government a boost in opinion polls ahead of September's parliamentary elections. The veteran politician was Prime Minister of Norway in 2000 to 2001 and 2005 to 2013. He headed the Western Military Alliance for a decade, including during US President Donald Trump's first term, stepping down last year. His appointment brings an experienced negotiator and diplomat to Norway's cabinet at a time of global trade tensions. Norway's Eurosceptic Centre Party quit the government last week in a dispute over the adoption of the European Union energy policies, leaving the centre-left Labour to rule alone. On the topic of trade wars, Mexican soldiers were mobilized to the border with the United States as part of an agreement that halted US tariffs on Mexican imports under the condition the Latin American country cracks down on fentanyl trafficking. The Mexican troops will be posted to hotspots along the border with high rates of illegal migration and drug and weapons trafficking, including the border states of Baja California, Sonora, and Tamaulipas. The plan to eventually deploy 10,000 Mexican soldiers forms part of a deal announced on Monday, under which US President Donald Trump paused his threat of 25% tariffs on Mexican imports. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum said under the agreement, the United States has also promised to work to stop the flow of high-powered weapons into Mexico from the US. Over the weekend, she had threatened retaliatory tariffs on goods imported from the US and non-tariff measures, but had not disclosed the rate for the tariffs. We now go to Australia, who has banned DeepSeek from all government devices on the advice of security agencies, citing privacy and malware risks posed by China's breakout AI program. The DeepSeek chatbot, developed by a China-based startup, has astounded industry insiders and upended financial markets since it was released last month. But a growing list of countries, including South Korea, Italy, and France, have voiced concerns about the application's security and data practices. Australia upped the ante overnight, banning DeepSeek from all government devices, one of the toughest moves against the Chinese chatbot. Government cybersecurity envoy Andrew Charlton said risks included that uploaded information might not be kept private and that applications such as DeepSeek may expose users to malware. As of today, all non-corporate Commonwealth entities must identify and remove all existing instances of DeepSeek products, applications, and web services on all Australian government systems and mobile devices. The directive also required that access, use, or installation of DeepSeek products be prevented across government systems and mobile devices. Salvage crews have recovered the bodies of all 67 people killed when a passenger plane and a US Army helicopter collided near Washington and plunged into the Potomac River. According to a statement from various agencies involved in the recovery effort, all but one of the bodies have been identified. The statement called the completion of the search for remains a significant step towards bringing closure to the families of the people who died in the accident last week. Crews continue working to recover the wreckage of the passenger plane, a Bombardier CRJ-700 operated by American Eagle Airlines. The National Transportation Safety Board said so far, crews have retrieved pieces including the right wing, a center section of the fuselage, part of the left wing, the tail cone, and rudder. 60 passengers on the plane and 4 crew members were killed in the accident, along with 3 soldiers aboard the US Army Black Hawk helicopter. There were no survivors. The National Transportation Safety Board is expected to compile a preliminary report within 30 days, though a full investigation could take a year. Indonesia has handed over to French authorities a man on death row for drug offences who began his return to his home country late on Tuesday, the latest in a series of foreign drug convicts repatriated from the ASEAN nation. French ambassador to Jakarta, Fabien Pinon, said France thanked Indonesia for the repatriation, adding that Sergei Altalui's status would be examined once he arrives in France. Sergei Atlaoui was sentenced to death in 2007 for his role as a chemist in an ecstasy factory that was capable of producing 100 kilograms of illegal pills every week. Atlaoui has long maintained his innocence, saying he thought he was working in an acrylics factory. Atlaoui's repatriation will follow those in December of Mary Jane Veloso, a Filipino mother and former domestic helper who was sentenced to death in 2010, and 5 remaining members of the Bali 9 Australian drug ring. All were jailed for drug offences and will serve the remainder of their sentences in their home countries. Indonesia agreed to repatriate Atlaoui on humanitarian grounds as he was suffering from cancer. Next up in sports, Al Hilal thrash Persepolis in Asian Champions League. We begin our sports segment with hockey. Malaysia suffered their second straight defeat in the Men's Indo Hockey World Cup, losing 2-5 to Argentina in their second Group B match at the Zatika Sports Centre in Porek, Croatia. Malaysia, who suffered a humiliating 12-4 loss to Germany in their opening Group B match, started well against Argentina before fading away. The Malaysians, coached by Muhammad Rodzanizam Mat Radzi, got their goals through Shami Irfan Suhaimi in the 12th minute and Muhammad Najmi Farizal Jazlan in the 39th minute. Argentina, who lost their opening tie 5-3 to Iran, made sure they bounced back with a 5-star performance, with goals from Gaston Rodriguez. After 2 matches, Germany lead the group with 6 points, followed by Argentina with 3 points and Iran also with 3 points. Malaysia, whose last group match is against Iran tomorrow, remained rooted at the bottom of the 14 Group B with no points. Commenting on the match, coach Muhammad Rodzanizam admitted that his players put on a better performance compared to when they were trashed 12-4 by Germany. According to him, the national players showed improvement, but luck was not on Malaysia's side as they made mistakes in the match.
Untuk pasukan kita, kita bermain dengan baik. Ada beberapa ketika yang mungkin sedikit kesilapan yang membuatkan pasukan Argentina dapat menceringkan gol.
He added that although Malaysia's chances of reaching the quarterfinals seemed slim after losing the past 2 matches, he hoped his players would bounce back in the next match against Iran early tomorrow. Moving on to football, Al Hilal thrashed Persepolis 4-1 in the Riyadh in Group B of the Asian Champions League, keeping them at the top of the table. Brazilian forward Malcolm opened the scoring for the hosts, who have already secured their place in the next round with a solo effort 10 minutes into the game at the Kingdom Arena. João Cancelo added the second 15 minutes later when he was granted the space to smash a low right foot drive into the bottom corner after a weak attempted save by Alexis Guendouzi. Salam Al-Dawsari then netted Al Hilal's third 7 minutes before half-time, rounding Guendouzi to score from a tight angle. The captain struck again from distance in first half injury time to claim the Saudi champions fourth before Georgian defender Georgi Gavlesiani scored a late consolation goal from the penalty spot for Persepolis. The win kept Al Hilal in first place in the standings, ahead of compatriots Al Ahly and Al Nasser, with Qatar's Al Saad in fourth and Al Wasl of the United Arab Emirates in fifth. All five have already qualified for March's last 16. For the two-time reigning Iranian champions, however, the heavy defeat sees them drop out of the qualification berths into ninth, equal on 6 points with Tehran rivals Esteghlal, but behind on goal difference. Still on football, Alphonso Davies has extended his deal with Bayern Munich to 2030. The Canadian captain rebuffing reported interest from Spanish giants Real Madrid. Wingback Davies has won 5 Bundesliga titles and the Champions League with Bayern, but had been linked with a move to Real as his contract was set to expire in the summer. The 5-year extension will keep Davies at the club he joined from MLS side Vancouver Whitecaps as an 18-year-old in 2019. The deal comes one day after Bayern also handed captain and goalkeeper Manuel Neuer a 1-year extension to keep him at the club until 2026. Davies is currently out with a hamstring injury picked up in January and is not expected to return until late February. He has played 220 games for Bayern, primarily as a wingback but also in the forwards, and has scored 12 goals and laid on 34 assists. Bayern sporting director Christoph Freud said the deal shows Bayern's status in international football and that Davies has found his sporting home in Munich. Meanwhile, world number 8 Alex de Minaur eased into the second round of the Rotterdam Open with a dominant 6-2, 6-4 win over David Goffin. De Minaur, last year's finalist in Rotterdam, moved freely throughout the 96-minute clash. During the second set of the first round clash, Goffin began to find his range and produced some of the shot-making that propelled him to the championship match at the Nitto ATP Finals in 2017. The former world number 7 used the backhand slice to counter De Minaur's heavy balls and stay in the long rallies, but the Australian was rewarded for his patience when he converted his 4th break point. The third seed Australian saved all 3 break points that he faced while converting 70% of his own. De Minaur also out-hit Goffin with 24 winners compared to the Belgians' 13. With his commanding victory, De Minaur improved to 6th love in his Lexus ATP head-to-head series, with Goffin, 3 of which have come in Rotterdam. He will next face Czech teenager Jakub Mensik. And that wraps up World Today. In our top story, negotiations begin on second phase of Gaza truce. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight, coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and Saluran Berita RTM. Till then, I'm Daryl Baptist from the river to the sea. Palestine will be free. Thank you for watching, and I wish you all a happy and scrumptious lunchtime. Goodbye.